In the Rhine Valley, workers pulled a sword from the ground that no blacksmith of its era could have forged. In a Norwegian museum, a bronze sphere sits behind glass with no record of its purpose and no culture that claims it. In the Aegean Sea, divers found a lens ground to optical precision 8 centuries before the telescope was invented. These objects are not theories. They are not legends. They sit in real museums, behind real glass with real catalogue numbers. Today we examine 7 artifacts that force a single uncomfortable question. What exactly did we forget? All 7 can be seen in person. None of them require a conspiracy to be extraordinary. Each one simply refuses to fit. In 1989, a metal analyst at a laboratory in New Jersey ran a routine test on a Viking Age sword recovered from a riverbed in Germany. The blade was stamped with the letters VLFBERHT, a mark found on roughly 170 swords scattered across northern Europe. What the analysis revealed stopped the team cold. The steel was so pure it had almost no impurities, the kind of metal that European foundries would not consistently produce until the Industrial Revolution, nearly 1,000 years later. To make steel this pure, you need temperatures exceeding 1,600 degrees Celsius and a sealed furnace. Medieval Europe had neither. The closest known source of comparable steel in that period was Persia and Central Asia, where the technique was kept as a closely guarded secret. Metal historian Alan Williams, who spent years studying Viking blades at the British Museum, confirmed the findings. The genuine Ulfberht swords were forged from steel that their contemporaries had no business possessing. The blades are flexible enough to bend without snapping, and sharp enough that modern testing has found their edges still capable of cutting. Whoever made these swords was working with a process that either travelled an extraordinary distance or was developed independently and then vanished completely. The workshop has never been found, the technique was never passed down. Approximately 170 swords remain as the only evidence of a tradition that left no other trace. In the 1st century AD, a Greek engineer named Hero of Alexandria built a metal sphere mounted on a sealed boiler. Steam from the boiler travelled through 2 hollow tubes into the sphere, and the sphere spun. He called it the Aeolipile. It worked on the same basic principle as a modern steam engine. Hero wrote about it alongside dozens of other machines he had built. Automatic doors triggered by altar fires, coin-operated holy water dispensers, theatrical performances that ran on their own using falling sand as a timer. He treated the spinning sphere as a novelty, a party trick. The device was never used to drive a wheel, lift a weight, or power anything at all. 17 centuries passed before James Watt built the engine that launched the Industrial Revolution. Engineers at the Science Museum in London built a working copy of Hero's device using only materials available in the 1st century. It spun. It worked. The gap between what Hero built and what Rome chose to do with it is not a gap in knowledge. It is a gap in decision. The technology existed. What is harder to explain is that no one tried again for 1,700 years. In 1850, an archaeologist named Austin Henry Layard dug through the ruins of the ancient palace of Nimrud in what is now northern Iraq. Among the objects he pulled from the ground was a small piece of clear crystal, roughly oval, about 4.5 centimeters long. One side was flat, the other had been carefully ground into a curved surface, the shape of a magnifying lens. Layard logged it and moved on. For nearly a century it sat in the British Museum, largely ignored. When researchers finally examined it closely, they found that the curve was not decorative, it was functional. The lens could magnify objects up to 3 times. It predates the invention of the telescope by more than 2,400 years. Crystal is much harder than glass, and extremely difficult to grind by hand into a precise curve. Assyrian craftsmen from this same period left behind engravings with lines so fine and so regular that modern researchers initially assumed they must have used some kind of optical aid. It seemed impossible to do that work with the naked eye alone. The lens doesn't prove they used it for that, but it proves the capability was there. The British Museum still holds it today. There is no record anywhere of what it was made for. More than 100 of them have been found across the old Roman Empire, from Britain to Hungary. Each one is a hollow, 12-sided bronze object, roughly the size of a large apple, with a round hole of a different size on each face and small round knobs at each corner. The largest collection is in a museum in Bonn, Germany. Here is what makes them extraordinary. In all of Roman writing, the engineering records, the military logs, the household accounts, the philosophy, the law, there is not a single mention of them. Not one word. Rome recorded almost everything. The dimensions of military sandals, how to build an aqueduct, what soldiers ate, But these objects, made in large numbers and carried across the entire empire, appear in no list, no description, no drawing. Some were found buried with coins and jewelry, suggesting they were considered valuable. Several show signs of heavy use. No one knows what they were for. A French mathematician showed that one can be used to calculate the best dates for planting crops based on the angle of sunlight, and it works. But that doesn't mean that's what they were. What cannot be argued is this: Rome made hundreds of them, valued them, and never wrote a single word of explanation. The silence is the mystery. If the history you've been taught feels like it's missing pages, you're right. Subscribe to Sapiens Occulta. We read the pages that didn't make it into the textbook. Why do you think Rome never documented the dodecahedra? Leave your answer below. In 1908, an Italian archaeologist named Luigi Pernier dug up a small palace on the island of Crete. In a basement room, he found a fired clay disc about 16 centimeters across. Pressed into both sides in a spiral pattern were 241 symbols: human figures, tools, animals, plants, geometric shapes. They were not drawn by hand. Each symbol had been stamped into the wet clay using its own pre-made seal, one by one, before the disc was fired. This is exactly how a printing press works. The Phaistos disc predates Gutenberg by more than 3,000 years. It has been studied by linguists, code breakers, and archaeologists for over a century. Not a single symbol has been decoded. The writing belongs to no known language. The direction it reads in is still debated. What is certain is that someone in the Bronze Age owned a complete set of stamps, one for each symbol, and used them to press a message into clay they then chose to preserve by firing. Whatever it says, they believed it was worth keeping. The disc has been waiting 3,700 years for someone to read it. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt came to a hill in southeastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. A previous survey had dismissed it as a medieval cemetery. Schmidt started digging. What he found changed everything we thought we knew about early human history. Beneath the surface was a complex of large circular structures, each built around carved stone pillars, up to 5.5 meters tall and weighing up to 10 tons. The pillars were covered in detailed carvings of animals: foxes, boars, cranes, scorpions, done at a level of skill no one expected from this period. The site dates to around 10,000 BC. That makes it at least 6,000 years older than Stonehenge and 7,000 years older than the first known cities. The problem is simple. In 10,000 BC, humans were not supposed to be capable of this. The historical record describes small nomadic groups with no permanent settlements and no organized labor. Building Göbekli Tepe required all of those things. The stone was cut from a quarry 500 meters away. The pillars were moved, shaped, and raised. When the builders were done, they filled the entire site in deliberately and buried it as if they wanted it to survive. Schmidt spent 20 years excavating and estimated that less than 5% of the site had been uncovered when he died in 2014. The tools found there are ordinary for the period: stone and bone. The gap between those tools and what they apparently built has never been explained. In the 1930s, workers clearing jungle in Costa Rica for a banana plantation began pulling large stone spheres out of the ground. The spheres are made from a rock harder than granite. They range from a few centimeters wide to 2.5 meters across. The largest weigh over 15 tons. There are more than 300 of them. The largest have been measured carefully. They are almost perfect spheres. The surface deviates from true roundness by less than 2 centimeters across a full 2.5 meter diameter. That level of precision is close to what modern stone cutting machines produce. The rock they are made from is extremely hard and difficult to shape. To carve a sphere this precise, you need a way to check the roundness constantly as you work, and you need tools hard enough to cut the stone in the first place. The people who made them left no written records. There is no surviving story or tradition that explains what the spheres were for. Many were found arranged in lines and patterns, but those arrangements were destroyed by land clearing before archaeologists arrived. The stone itself came from mountains more than 50 kilometers away. No one knows how it was moved. The culture that made them was gone before Europeans arrived. In 2014, UNESCO made them a World Heritage Site. They sit in jungle clearings and museum courtyards, nearly perfect, saying nothing about how they were made. What surprised you most about what you heard today? Write it in the comments. We crossed the Rhine and walked through a Viking forge. We stood in Hero's workshop in Alexandria and held a lens ground in Assyria before the first Olympic Games. We turned a bronze dodecahedron in our hands and read a disc that no one has decoded in 4,000 years. We touched the stones of a monument built before the wheel and measured spheres shaped to precision by hands we know nothing about. Every one of these objects is real. Everyone has a museum address. None of them need an alternative explanation to be extraordinary. They simply require honesty about what we do not know. We call our era the information age, but information is not the same as understanding. Our ancestors held knowledge we are still catching up to, and they held it without laboratories, without computers, without even the word technology. We call their achievements anomalies because they do not fit our model of the past. Perhaps the model is what needs adjusting. The real question is not what they knew. It is how much we have convinced ourselves they could not have known.